on a local committee consisting of two of the Marmora and Lake councillors, Bonnie Daines and Linda Bracken, and the former Reeve of Marmora, Doug Lynch. We are trying to bring together the history of the Deloro village plus the history of the people that work there. And it is for this reason that we are interviewing Ted Bedore, who was an employee of the Deloro Smelting and Refining Company for many years. I'd like to introduce you now to Ted Bedore, an employee of the Deloro Smelting Company. Ted?
I started at Deloro in 1941 in July, and I consider myself now, thinking back, that I was one of the lucky ones to go to the Cobalt, get into the Cobalt metals, which was 100% war work. It was a very dirty place to work. We did have washrooms there, and well, no shower, but we could go to the dry and at the end of the shift and have a shower and put on our clean clothes to go home, because we were almost like Negroes at the end of 8 hours. It was a very hot place to work because the cobalt roundels had to be roasted to a white heat. I think it was somewhere around 2,500 degrees from the furnaces in 4 hours. But it was a much healthier place really to work than some of the other parts of the plant, especially the old silver plant where men was exposed to arsenic fumes almost all the time, and you had to be very careful working there. If you started to sweat, well, it was time to go and get some fresh air and cool down, because you would burn so quick from the arsenic. And they didn't even have washrooms in that part of the plant. The men had to go to the dry, which was down along the river, and that's where we got our arsenic suits washed, and could have a shower before we went home. And but the working conditions in the old silver plant it was really hard work. Everything was done by hand, and even pushing the pots for the slag from the blast furnace was really heavy work. And then when they tapped from the blast furnace in the silver plant, when the slag from the top running into the pots continually, when it started to get a little bit white, they figured it was time to tap the bottom of the furnace, and they had to take out a clay plug and run it into different pots that were shaped like a pot. And the silver in cobalt was heavier than the other part of the metal, so it settled in the bottom. And so they were able to pull these pots away from the furnace, and after they cooled and set, I imagine it was probably 4 hours or maybe more, you could take a big long handle and tip the pot upside down, and here was your silver cap, and then your cobalt cap. And you could break them off with a sledgehammer, and of course the silver was very expensive stuff, so it was watched very careful, and it was immediately taken to the bullion where they re-smelted it and shipped out silver ore blocks of silver ore. I think they weighed as an average of about 89 or 90 pounds, which was almost 99% pure silver when it was shipped away. And at that time, why they had a truck when they shipped the silver, they had to take it by truck to the Deloro or the Marmara station, and somebody had to ride in the truck with a shotgun and transferred to the silver plant and working up there. And the blast furnace was fed by hand on the second floor, where the furnace was actually on the first floor. And you had to mix a charge for the furnace by hand, and then about every 15 minutes, it was usually 2 men shoveled it into the furnace. And it was very hot work too, because you were shoveling the charge right into the hot metal. And over the years, it was very good working conditions as far as the product for Deloro was concerned. But in the later years, it was hard to get men that was interested in the product, so they wouldn't mix the charge right, and then the furnace wouldn't work right. And they'd put too much of one thing in and not enough of something else that was hard to handle, and this was causing a great concern. But then in the later years, why they started getting ore that was, a lot of it came from Cobalt, and it came in a granular form in big bags, and we had to wheel them with old steel-wheeled, two-wheeled trucks out of the cars. And some of those bags, we have had bags come in that weighed as much as 1,400 pounds. And on average, they run from 800 to 1,000. So it took 2 men they were standing up in the boxcar, and it took a man with a truck would try to get the truck underneath the bottom of the bag, and then he also reached over and pulled on the bag, and have 2 other men. The bags were sewed and left like an ear on them, where you could almost get 2 hands on each corner of the bag. And it took 3 men to tip it back onto the truck. And then you had to be very careful. If it come back on the truck too hard, the truck went down. You couldn't hold it. And until you got it balanced right, then 1 man wheeled it into the building and up on the 3rd floor of the silver plant, and would set them up against the wall, and I think there was anywhere from 38 to 40 ton in a carload of that came in. And it wasn't the early part didn't have as much arsenic in the ore as some of the later years.